Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2, with arguably the #1 player in the history of North America, the Canadian Zerg in the blue. We have Scarlett, facing off against the only other player who could be included in that conversation, the 3-time WCS champion and the best player ever from the United States of America, the Protoss in the red. It's Neeb, in a best-of-5 Protoss versus Zerg showdown. No, it's not 2019, it's 2026, and this is the $20,000 Douyou Legends Cup tournament. And before we get started, it'd be incredible if you could smash that like button, maybe even subscribe. Tell me kind of the algorithm. And Jimmy, what are we at? Yes, it's real. 1,871 likes on this video, on this cast. And I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better. As Neeb comes out of retirement in order to school Scarlett on the new patch. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse that the game was changed so dramatically just about a week before this tournament. As, well, this is the top 4 of originally 16 players, including those like Innovation, and TY, and Oliveira. So, clearly playing enough to fight his way through, despite the fact that many Protoss have been struggling. So I think Neeb has always been a little bit different and arguably a little bit better. And we'll see how much he's played on the new patch and already starting things up. Apparently not enough to stop 2 Zerglings from getting into his base. And 1 probe will suffer the price. But he did deflect the original drone and block the Natchery. Scarlett forced into the 3rd. The Adepts get into the main. Neeb built his career off of Adepts and is starting off strong already with 2 kills. Scarlett delayed the Zergling speed ever so slightly. Or maybe that's just how late it is nowadays. This is before the hotfix patch, but after the buff to Larva and the rework of Warp Gate. So, arguably a little bit better for Zerg than it would even be a few days after this, but still. 8 workers to start, though we've clearly moved past that point. Neeb with 31. That pylon wall is certainly interesting. Is it good? Is it bad? Hero? Some thoughts? Would be the first time. A gateway wall, and what a save! What a save! The 2 pylons blocking in the Adept in literally the last possible second. How much HP on that Adept? 2. 1 more than he needed. And now the Void Ray lights up and the Overlord is burnt out. Scarlett hard supply blocked. 49 over 48 with no Overlords on the way. And another Adept gets in the main. The Zerglings across the map. That's going to be maybe 1 more drone killed. And a lot of mining time lost. Make that 2. Somehow the Adept gets the extra range and fires off the shot. Scarlett at 37 drones. And Neeb so far has just lost 2 Adepts in the process. He just takes a 3rd. 5 minutes in. Not, in the grand scheme of things, not particularly quick, but definitely on the quicker side of things, considering he has 1 Oracle, 1 Void Ray, and 2 Adepts. And one of those Adepts is, well, not feeling so good after all this. This Adept might feel even worse. Gonna kite back just a little. Oracle in the main. Scarlett looking the other way. Stasis catches a few drones. Not too great, not too terrible. Still, a little bit of economic damage. And it's a bit annoying. Oh, of course. Glaive to Depths. The more things change, the more things stay the same. Neeb, who I think if anyone could be credited... Oh, you ran out of energy! In his old age, not realizing, but... Okay, well, he's like 27, I guess. But 29? I don't know. Calm down, Grandpa. How's the back pain, man? Neeb, I don't know if I already mentioned it, so that's my age, but going back to school after retiring pretty much near the top of his game, not after winning WCS, but still doing well. I believe he won the North American Regional in 2022 is when he decided to pursue other knowledge, like, you know, the more conventional version. But clearly been practicing, and clearly Scarlett caught off guard so far. She's got a Roach Horn on the way. We've got an Evolution Chamber nearly completed. But it's 54 to 57 workers in favor of Neeb, who's been chrono boosting probes The Adepts, 50 Shades with Glaives, always dangerous, and always remarkably hard to scout when your opponent has a very active Stargate. So 10 Roaches on the way, and behind it, a Fleet Beacon. Neeb is going from Adepts to Mothership, or at least something along those lines, which, you know, why not? It's a new patch, it's a new opportunity, and he has much fresher strategies, I think, than almost anyone else who's been trying to, you know, play the last one, at least regularly. And honestly, I think there's no better opportunity to actually see something new from a pretty competent player that isn't just a worse version of something we've seen before. And I'm not talking about Hero, because Hero, there's no version of anything. But a lot of Protoss and Terran especially, but also Zerg, just have tried to fit a square peg in a trapezoid hole with the new patch. Instead of, you know, trying to debate the idea of what is a peg entirely. Questions that your mother asks on a regular basis. So, a mothership is on the way. 2 Stargates behind it. And, well, a transition from Adept Glaives directly into Sky Toss while still throwing shade across the map. The Hydraless Den is nearly completed for Scarlett. And Hydras are pretty good against Adepts. The numbers really matter. What? Phoenixes? In this economy? Huh. Well, Hydras are quite good against Phoenixes, make no mistake. Hydras are debatable as a anti-air unit, but Phoenixes are not nearly as strong against Mass Hydra. Again, it's a numbers game. Okay, this is just a spreadsheet in disguise as the Oracle is taken down on the backslide. Neeb trying to take the 4th base, which should be a little bit suspicious for the Roach Hydra composition, as there's no reason Neeb has... The fact that Neeb has gases at the 3rd, and just Adepts, he's only shown Adepts. Scarlett might not have gotten the scout on the Fleet Beacon, but she knows that nothing else has come across the map, and there's clearly no Templar, and the unit composition is surprisingly sparse. So I'm not surprised to see more drones, to see an infestation pit for potentially Hive, or just infestors, because it's probably a mothership. Scarlett is a much more... While the game she is balanced designer of, no, not this one, though you can have your conspiracy theories, but Zero Space is releasing next month, or this month. What year is it? July 20th of 2026. Zero Space is releasing into early access, and Scarlett is the balanced designer. But for now, I'm going to try to tilt the balance of Zerg versus Protoss. And I said that Phoenixes are not so good against the Hydras. But if the Hydras are staring them directly in the face because the Phoenixes lifted up into the sky, well, that's how they end up in the unit's lost tab. The Adept Shade in the main. Neeb kept them alive, waiting for an opportunity. And the Queens are not going to be enough to deal with this quickly. Maybe not deal with it at all. Neeb has his mothership, like, Phoenix composition. The Phoenix is looking for another opportunity to get damage done. But really, I guess it's not about how many drones you lose, but about how many you can replace them with. As Scarlett, at 83 drones to 79, loses 12 and plummets to a worker lead. The Phoenixes are almost out of energy to murder drones with. A mass recall, pulling some of the units to the front line, using the mothership as a super warp gate, and picks up, knocks down a few more drones, so Scarlett has expanded her lead, obviously. You might think, wow, 14 drones now. Scarlett's now up by 10. Because of course she is. And no, is there even a Spire? What? It's clearly Sky Toss. Hydras, well, this is more of a Hydra risk, but then snipes the mothership. The time warp will make it a little bit harder to retreat, but that's just too many Hydras. Neeb leaving the mothership out, which, of all the things... And, well, without the mothership to provide both that tankiness and potentially cloak, just generally, the mothership is a pretty good damage dealer with the sheer amount of beams it fires off at the Hydras. It's a real DPS unit ever since we added 4 beams instead of 1. Who would have thought? 3 carriers are on the way, but they have yet to arrive. There's Void Rays, which are also mediocre in this situation. A carrier with half its interceptors will have to retreat. Another ship on the way. The Adept's gonna shade into the midst of everything. Neeb gonna try to pick this apart before he has no opportunity to. The Hydra's not yet at a critical mass. Picks up a few more. The Phoenix is getting targeted down. The Void Ray is doing the damage. +1 attack is done. The Hydra's melting away. The Roaches are also here. Void Rays down to 3, but the Hydra count is just not high enough. And the carriers and Mothership behind and Tempest on the way. Neeb putting together the Sky Toss composition, but there are 22 Hydra-less in production. Scarlett with a massive supply lead. She's got 95 drones. Does she have a Hydra lunge? No. Of all the players to miss out on that upgrade, Scarlett does not like sitting back and turtling. This is an economic game. She's trying to play 300 supply Zerg, where you refill as quick as possible. Neeb is playing 150 supply Protoss, but he doesn't need to. 2,300 minerals in the bank. But he's still gonna fight heads up. The second Mothership, this one a lot better protected. Targeting down, but a couple Archons out in front with overwhelming amounts of power. They absorb so much damage, and Scarlett is driven back. The Golden Armada, this time coming together. And Neeb driving the Zerg off the high ground and all the way back across the map. Storm is on the way. At some point, you need the storms. It's not an option. Until this point, the Sky Toss and the Gateway units have been enough. But Scarlett knows what she's dealing with now. And she has the economy to just overrun it. And the only way is splash damage to deal with the sheer tide of Zerg that's going to be rolling in. Now, this is a bit of an awkward set of rocks here that choked this off. Trying to get, well, not necessarily trying to get rid of the roaches and things, but using a relatively small amount of supply in order to deny bases. Warping in 10 charge lots? Yes, they have charge. They have +1. +2 air weapons is on the way. The charge lots on hold position, which, pretty good. The Zerglings have +1 Carapace and Adrenal Glands, which they're nibbling with dentures right now. More like methlings at this point. Dark Shrine on the way. A Shrine to Dark. Who's coming back to us in a few months? Speaking of players returning. But he's confirmed it. And he's even looking for a team actively before he even comes back, which is just good planning. But a Nidus network. 3 lurkers. Scarlett shifting into the long-range siege. But incredibly notably, and somewhat concerningly, there is no Spire. And without it, eventually, the Fist of Neeb. If you remember, many years ago, and hard to forget, something like that, Neeb with a 199 supply Golden Armada army, winning, I want to say it was against Scarlett. It may have been Cyril. It was a high-profile Zerg. 3 carriers to defend. What a proportional response to Scarlett with 30 or 40 supply. And down the left side, abducts a carrier, barely kills it. What will it cost? Almost everything. The lurkers are still underneath, as there's no detection with the army. Observers on the way. Templar gets shredded. And we gotta calm down. The game should be slowing down, but Scarlett is slowing up. The Queens are now right outside the base as the creep is extending across the majority of the map. Scarlett consuming it. The creep spread might be a bit slower, but Scarlett has never been slow about it. Yanks in 2 more. Get over here! And completely knocked down. The mass recall, bringing some of the reinforcements, the carriers from the other side. Yanks in another one. Queens will try to knock it down. They will be successful. An optimistic storm. I think that's going to kill more interceptors than it does Zerg, consuming a very valuable base. Completely dry on the interceptors. Zerglings on the other side. A big warp in on a Neeb will defend the base for now. A Nidus at the very back. The cannon should be able to take it out in time. But the Mothership, 9 kills. Neeb is at 160 supply. Scarlett is maxed out with money in the bank. But again, she has just Hydras, which is apparently enough if you keep yanking out another carrier at a time. DTs warped in order to defend, which gives away the fact that DTs are an option at this stage, though I believe the Overseer scouted it either way. The Hydra's hitting the 5th base. Scarlett keeping pressure on to the north, while Neeb is struggling to defend the south. So far, Scarlett just overwhelming Neeb's defenses, despite the inspired strategy and the lack of Spire from Scarlett. It's not... Instead of spiraling out of control, Scarlett is starting to lock this down. Though, as long as Neeb has 4 bases, at least for the next few minutes, though the main base gas is mining out, he needs a 5th. Desperately. And the fact that Scarlett has been mining despite consuming, clearly, many of those buildings, the fact that Scarlett has been mining comfortably at the gold base, that is not a half-map base. There's only 1 gold base on this map, and Scarlett is already like 50% of the way through mining it. Another Nidus at the back. The DTs and charge lots are actually eviscerating the Roach Hydra. But eventually the numbers are there, the reinforcements. The Hydra's in a precarious position. Those Templar are deadly. The Storm slides out. Where's the Hydra lunge? He's got it done, but it's such a finicky ability to use. Meanwhile, the Hydra laying over to the right side. Only cannons to defend. And that's going to be barely a stopgap. The carriers will move in to support them. Some charge lots warped in as well. The tactical Nidus lunges away. Scarlett over to the left. Neeb has to know this is a probability. And there it is. The feedbacks on the Vipers gets all 3. A single abduct. I don't even know if it hit anything. And Neeb shuts it down. And now the carriers have driven back the Hydras over to the right flank. The Hydra's getting chased. Harried by the carriers. A single one very optimistically going to chase them. The speed zone's helping out. Scarlett bringing all the units together. Finally, Scarlett admits that maybe, just maybe, Corruptors are going to be required. That was it. That was the breaking point there. Where, at some point, the Hydra's just... There's too many storms. The army's too strong. Neeb has too much army supply. The carriers, wow, they fly off into Narnia. Like, the Zealots trying to hold the door. The Zerglings getting a surprisingly good surround. They have +2, 3, well, they have 2/2 upgrades now. +3 ranged attack is the only one. The Changeling wades through the storm for a split second. The Zerglings are breaking through against just the +2 attack Zealots. 2 more carriers yanked out. Oh, Neeb's looking the other way. The storms in return. But the carriers have been removed from the map. At least the ones on this side of things. The carriers sniped the base to the 12 o'clock. Scarlett moving down to defend. Interceptors may be taken out. The Vipers, only 2 of them remain and have enough energy for at least 1 abduct apiece. But, well, at some point, clearly the shift queue on the abduct. Well, get over! The recall actually hits the carrier. Apparently, it still is recalled, even if it gets abducted mid-recall. It just took too long. Neeb is trying to expand down the center. There's a rich Vespine base here, which means half the total gas, but he can mine it twice as quickly. Or wait, no, 50% more quickly now. They nerfed how quickly it mines. The intern in all his wisdom and all his glory. But it is still the same amount, which is a very key point. A lurker gets behind the mineral line. Neeb moving forward, the storms on the ramp. And you shall not pass. Neeb holding. Once again. Scarlett trying to get a full surround. How many Corruptors? 0. 53 Hydralisks. Wow. Is there enough storm? The time warp. Hydra's dying by the dozen. Thankfully, there's even more dozens behind them. The charge lot's working through. Scarlett mining out the gold base. Neeb now mining with half of his probes on the freshest one. Takes out the hatchery. Scarlett is supply blocked at 182 over 176. She lost too many overseers in the front of the fight. And that's actually kind of a huge... No, don't make 13 more drones. What are you doing? Are there even enough mineral patches to mine with? Well, if Scarlett expands to what would usually be considered Neeb's base... And, well, the creep spread is oppressive right now. The Spore Crawlers, a Sporist is coming together. There's only 1 storm. But those Hydras, all of them could potentially die to it. Neeb. Oh, yanks in a carrier, lunges to kill it. A pretty sad storm there. Neeb been using energy recharge. He's clearly played. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's still top Grandmaster. Just not regularly competing in tournaments. But very clearly, honestly, some of the most interesting and original, while still competent Protoss on the new patch I've seen so far. And clearly, just while we're ending up with a similar composition that many other Protoss prefer, this kind of more split style, having two different battle groups of Skytoss, sending out carriers, like carrier groups, quite literally, which is not a surprising strategy from the American, but is it effective in the long run? Against this many drones? It remains to be seen. 87 drones for Scarlett, who's maintained the income advantage for over 10 minutes. And that's a bit of an understatement. Mining 500 to 1,500 more resources per minute. Feedbacks on the Overseers. Trying to get something done with the Storm. The rocks that are... These are technically destructible rocks. In such an awkward place that most players don't even realize it. But Neeb now has a Templar Archon. He has Dark Templar, Archons, and Charge Lots. And this must be respected. You pretty much need Lurkers or an overwhelming amount of Hydras to deal with this. And that could potentially leave the northern flank open for attack. Or it could distract Neeb enough that he ends up losing another carrier as Scarlett knocks it out of the sky. But the Storms catch the Hydras between a rock and a hard place. The Hydras on their own, it's just Archons. And on creep, the Hydras should be able to out-micro them. Neeb has +2 ground weapons and +3 air attack. And that's it. Whereas Scarlett is busy filling in pretty much maximum Zerg upgrades. She's got 3-3-3 on the ground and most of the way through 2-2 in the air, despite not building a single air unit besides Overseers so far, which do technically benefit from Flyer Carapace, by the way. Fun fact. Not that that helps against Storm. A single carrier, but there's 2 Hydras for anti-air. So the carrier will just almost kill the Viper. Meanwhile, the Charge Lot's over to the left side. Neeb keeping the pressure on, and Scarlett has barely any minerals left. She's got 5,000 gas, but almost no minerals. Recalling the Archons with the army directly into the Lurker fire, but manages to evade it for long enough. Moving up to the north side, Scarlett in the natural with the Zerglings. Neeb over to the left with the Charge Lots, eviscerating the drones and hitting the base to the north. Scarlett could be losing 2 bases, while Neeb may end up losing all of his. The DTs are warped in to defend. The Zerglings getting cleaned up. Scarlett does not have the economy to rebuild. The Vipers popped by the feedback. The Mothership helping out. 39 kills and counting. The Tempest shelling the Hydras. The Mothership finishing them off. The Charge Lot's still doing damage. There's not really any reinforcements because Scarlett has upgraded her Corruptors incredibly well. And now the only issue is she hasn't paid for any of them. She has 0 Corruptors and 2-2 in the skies. But you know what's even better? 10 more Hydras. At least for dramatic effect. Scarlett, with this Lair-Tech Zerg, just enough Lurkers to hold down some bases. But not enough of them, as the gold base has now been denied. Neeb is mining. This is Neeb's only really mining base. These are the only mineral patches. The Storms on the Lurkers melting through them, and the Mothership will not be denied. Finally, the shields are stripped away. Some DTs are warped in. There is detection, but it slows things down for a bit. The Time Warp is used. Active cloaking. Tempest still shelling. The Archon helping out. The Vipers are here. Parasitic Bomb on the Mothership, I think, at this point. Meanwhile, they're yanking the carrier 1 step at a time. Eventually gets it. No detection for the Lurkers, but the Tempests are doing terrible, terrible damage. 30 kills, 26 kills, 54 kills on the Mothership. Neeb, with 3 units, is driving back the entirety of the Zerg, but the Lurkers that survive will slice through the rest of the economy. 30 left. GG. It's over. Neeb may not have realized how flat broke Scarlett was, but I seriously doubt she was going to be broken. Oh, he lost the Mothership. The Mothership died as he typed the G's. And after 26 minutes, 200 Hydralisks. Only 2 motherships, including that last one. Neeb, a light in the darkness for Protoss, snuffed out by the overwhelming blood of Zerg. Just drowning the field in units. Scarlett. It's not about how many units you lose. It's about how many you can replace them with. What a game. A true North American representation from the 2 best players in the history of the most entertaining region. Like and subscribe if you agree. Game number 2. Rorschach. Scarlett in the bottom left corner. Neeb in the bottom right. And... Scarlett versus Neeb. Come back to us, Neeb. Again, it wasn't like Neeb was frustrated with the game or decided that he didn't want to... Just decided to move on. Which is, you know, a very pragmatic play. But, you know, we have the indicators now. Where you're supposed to place your pylons. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But I think, therefore I am. And that pretty much confirms that clearly he's still at the top level. Scarlett, honestly, it felt a little weird that Scarlett was even invited to this tournament. I'm not complaining, but Scarlett, by far of the players invited, between like TY, Oliveira, Neeb, Scarlett. Scarlett is the only player who had professional games in the last year. Besides Oliveira playing in a similar sort of show match in a tournament that he was also casting. Where are you going? Scarlett? Do you know? Well, Neeb already has a Nexus. So it's just a drone scout? I don't know if she would have went for the proxy hatch, but threatening it. But Neeb has to know. Neeb saw the...
Our drones are under attack.
Huh. But yeah, Scarlett being by far the most active, even though this is StarCraft is her very part-time job now. And honestly, I'm very excited for Zero Space. And some news on that coming soon, but more news than just the fact it's releasing. I do hope. I know Scarlett. So Scarlett apparently, her first, or at least her background in RTS, is from doing Warcraft 3 modding on the Warcraft 3 map editor. So not just a random I played StarCraft 2 as a pro background, but really has the long-term, and some of you out there know exactly what that means, probably better than me, as I only played the world of Warcraft. Actually, I played Warcraft 3. I just didn't really understand it at the time. Heroes? What does that mean? But yeah. So, it'll be interesting to see. But there's a lot of interesting things about Zero Space that we're not going to talk about now, because we got to talk about that game number 1 some more. There were several opportunities, I think, for both players to be in a winning position significantly earlier. But that's kind of their styles. Both of them have always been... Neeb has always been maybe too patient. And Scarlett, whatever the opposite is. Not like reckless, but instead just... What if I could get 15 more drones? What if I could get 20 more Hydras? I don't think I've ever seen more than 50 Hydras on the field at one time. And I didn't see it for very long last game. But it technically happened. Well, Scarlett actually stole a gas here in game 2 with that drone scout that was probably threatening a proxy. Scarlett has 23 drones, which is not great. She's building 8 more. The Adept, body blocking. Neeb manages to get another drone. This is a very awkward start. between the drone scout being a significant percentage of the economy early on, and now the adepts racking up several more kills. Only got one drone, but forced out many Zerglings, which is why Neeb has a 5-worker advantage. The adept! Oh no! The adept body blocked the probe. And this time it will cost the third base timing. This wall off is certainly something. But it technically works. Just like last game, it was perfectly timed. Overlord. Burnt out, but this time around Scarlett has plenty of them. Adept gets into the main. Maybe another drone kill. Oh, the queen was in the way. Brenda, you're way too thick. Most people like that, but it's getting in the way, physically. Got a lot of gear in the rear, don't I, Susan? Susan. Brenda, we're identical twins. We have a lot of gear in the rear, don't we? Just don't stop making it weird. You started. Sorry. I am whacked up. Glaive to depths. Why not? This is such a late glaives. Now, again, the conventional wisdom. Is he gonna build a depth? So technically, since almost every single Protoss has ignored this fact, I almost forgot to mention it. But now Warp Gate, Neeb is actually doing a build adepts out of gateways. So now once you research Warp Gate, units build 40% faster out of gateways. It is still almost always better to warp them in because they're instantly on location. But each Warp Gate individually costs 25 minerals and 25 gas. So it's not a huge investment, but it is effectively a tax on having warp gates. So Neeb is going for mass adepts, not that they're happy about it here, off of gateways. Using warp gate as a chrono boost, and then chrono boosting even further, making these adepts incredibly fast. And now he just gives up and goes for warp gate on the rest, but this is a lot of adepts. And Scarlett, well, we'll realize it now. The adepts being obviously scouted. The shade is thrown. The rest of the Zerglings will just get cloven in twain. There's roaches on the way, Zerglings as well. And this time, Mutas as a counterpunch seemed to be the choice. Behind it, this seems to be the strat. There's a fleet beacon on the way. And, well, the adepts walled off. Scout has 67 drones, which is not a booming economy, especially compared to Neeb's 64 probes. Scarlett cannot afford really any losses economically dealing with this. The adepts are a real threat to the hatchery itself here. And Oracle gets a massive stasis. Actually, got it a while ago, and clearly neither myself nor Scarlett looking at that time. 2 more Stargates on the way. Almost forgets to cancel the Evo, and then eventually does, which is not necessarily a good thing. A Queen gonna get taken out by the Adepts. There are 2 more Stargates on the way. And another wave of Adepts is sent into the third. And Neeb again throwing shade, and Scarlett suffering for it. Gets in, targets some Queens, gets away, third base. Didn't get on top of the drones, but just slaughters another Queen. 5, 6 drones dead. And it just continues. The Adept sliding by into the main. Up the ramp, 9 drones dead. Mothership on the way. Scarlett again plummets to a worker lead. You can't just keep building drones. Sorry. It's gonna be Phoenixes. The Spire is scouted immediately. And these are the most justified Phoenixes of all time. Phoenix range is already on the way. 16 drones dead. How is Scarlett still even? 11 more drones in production. Mass Phoenix. Yet again. I forgot about the Phoenixes last game. That game was so hectic, so chaotic. And it ended so dramatically. I completely forgot about the Phoenix phase. And this time around, Scarlett got the Spire instead of the Hydralisk Den. It's not going to be... You can't go Mutas now. Not after the Spire was scouted that early. Corruptor Roach is a brute force sort of composition. But it might have to be the objective here for Scarlett. As she has nothing to deal with air otherwise. And that's why she's very reluctantly scuttling across the map. This is not enough roaches to do. Honestly, it's a bit greedy moving out at all. I think Scarlett agrees. Oracle. She's trying to maybe threaten, but the Phoenixes... Oh, no. Yeah, well... Roaches aren't exactly an easy target to kill. Neeb just chilling. There are carriers on the way. 8 corruptors in production. Bit of a missed opportunity there. Could have picked up probably 5-6 roaches before Queens got anywhere close. Because +1 air weapons is done. Usually roaches are kind of hard to kill. Many things are kind of hard to kill for Phoenixes, but the +1 air weapons applies to both of the attacks. Because the Phoenixes have relatively low damage, but multiple attacks at once. And those weapon upgrades apply to both and help counteract some of the armor from, like, corruptors or roaches, for example. The carriers are on the way. The mass corruptor. The roaches and layings on the 4th base. Neeb, sorry, 5th base. Neeb already has a 4th up and running. So Scarlett, with 88 drones, full 4-base saturation. A congress of corruptors on the way, at heavy cost. 14 corruptors, that's not going to be enough. Mass baneling. Baneling speed, taking down the rocks here. Does not see the banelings behind. This will be the first baneling spotted. Boxing out. There's no detection! Oh no! The mothership large enough to cloak everything. You gotta be careful picking up the banelings as they splash over whatever on the ground. But... oh no. The banelings are both spotted and negated by the mothership. As Neeb, once again, technologically outmaneuvering Scarlett. The question will be whether she has the numbers to overwhelm the agility of this composition. Okay, agility might be a little strong. And technically everything has agility, it's just not all things have very much of it. Anyways, how's the back pain? Meanwhile, the baneling's just rolling in. There's not too many probes here vulnerable, but they will be, for the most part, taken out. Ravagers added in. 11 probes dead, but it will cost the entire ground army. And an infestation pit just started. Which, it's late. It's painfully late. More corruptors in production. Neeb should come back to defend. There is a recall available. Neeb is not going to wait. Going to rely on a single carrier and a few cannons. The Adept still mixed into the composition. More corruptors coming out. The Queen's doing what they can. The Spore Crawler taken out with ease. The Corruptors melting away. +2 air weapons done, which is also incredibly important for the carriers. The Time Warp holding it down. And there's no critical mass of Corruptors. Scarlett cannot knock these units out of the sky without suffering possibly too heavy of losses. That was quite a sentence. But it's looking like a death sentence for Scarlett as the Void Ray is just burning across the countryside, melting through the Corruptors, the Interceptors just gutting down the Queens. And who's going to stop this? The drones are transferring in the worst possible pathing. Almost all of them will die in the process. 5 more Void Rays on the way. The mass Void Rays in order to counteract the Corruptors. The Prismatic Alignment with the bonus damage against armor. Just easily taking out. Hey, Neeb's done. He's shored up the weaknesses and played to the strengths. And Scarlett just does not have enough to deal with it. From the very start of the game, honestly, from the hatchery block, it feels like Neeb had full control of the situation. Loses 2 cannons. The units lost 24,000 to 9,000 resources. The cost efficiency just obscenely good. And Neeb apparently still has it. We're all tied up 1-1. Wow. Game number 3. Neeb in the top left, Scarlett in the bottom right of Rainfall. These two, I did not check the record before, Though Jimmy better have put it up at the start of the video. I wouldn't be surprised if they've gone near 50-50. I might be completely misremembering the matchup, as both of these players have several North American championships throughout various years of StarCraft 2. Neeb? So fun fact, Neeb was Terran. You might not have known that. And that tells you how much success he had before Legacy of the Void, when he switched to Protoss and really pioneered an adept-based style that was beating such players that we had barely heard of, like Serral. Fun fact, until about 2018, Neeb was considered superior to Serral, because Serral, while everybody thought he was really good, just didn't have that level of consistency. Kind of like Clem until like 2021 or so, where this could be the best player in the world, but he's still got to prove it. And there was a time when Neeb was in that conversation as one of the first non-Korean players to really threaten the very best of the best. Unfortunately, didn't have the long-term success that I'm sure he might have hoped for, but was still very good right up until he decided to, I guess, technically retire, though comes out of retirement, rejoins his team onside for this tournament specifically, and I think representing him well, clearly as prepared. Though the thing is, again, I actually think that the patch being, even though the patch in many ways, you might argue, nerfed Protoss. I think a lot of people argued that in the first week or two of the patch. The fact is, Scarlett has been playing regularly pretty much non-stop. Maybe not as regular as she once did, but it kind of resets the playing field just a little bit and allows Neeb to show off his execution and his strategy in this strategy game. It really does feel like StarCraft 2, and this is probably the reason you're watching instead of playing, which I know, at least according to the poll we did, over 80% of you are in that category. But it feels a lot more like real time than strategy. And I know that's 2/3 of the name, but it doesn't matter how good your build is if you fall apart the moment an Adept shades into your base, or a Reaper jumps in, or even some Zerglings slip by. Okay? Being down 4 workers in a supply block doesn't help you execute your carefully laid plans for the 12-minute mark, because you'll never get there. The Creep Tumor also won't make it any further as the Adept commits to killing it. They will take some damage in the process. Of course, a Stargate on the way. The Zerglings slip by. Once again, Scarlett committing a couple Zerglings. And this is costly, as building 6 Lings early to deal with the first Adept, like just having those 2 Lings, is slowing down Scarlett's economy. Even though she killed a probe, and will she get 2? No. Beautiful micro from Neeb. Shuts down the Zerglings, and going to continue. It's a Void Ray first again. Now we see if Neeb has more than one build. We've seen the same build twice. Scarlett has tried a couple different things. The Glaive Adept still a staple. Void Ray lights up and decides. Oh. Twilight Council on the way. I think this would be a great opportunity to actually switch it up. This is the dilemma historically for Protoss. Is you might have, and this is why Protoss is so prevalent and so strong, both on the ladder in a best of 1, in smaller tournaments and best of 3s, and less so in larger tournaments and like deep in larger tournaments in a best of 5 or 7. Because you can have one strategy, or at least a different take on a strategy that catches a Zerg off guard. That's their whole thing. Then they adapt. They evolve. Speaking of, Evolution Chamber on the way. earlier than usual. Do you continue doing that same strategy with diminishing returns? Or do you change it up? And that has been the struggle for Protoss throughout StarCraft 2, and in general, is maintaining that success through a longer series. And Neeb has decided it's time to mix it up. Charge is the choice. So going to look very similar. He's got 3 kills on just these 2 adepts. Another one? Stop right there, criminal scum. Scarlett grabs the adept, rips it apart. To shreds, I say. Sorry, I know I'm a little... I'm very excited. Okay, I'm allowed to be excited for Scarlett versus Neeb. I never thought we'd see this match again. And honestly, whenever we have these Legends matches, or let's see, would you want to see Brett Favre versus... I don't even know if Jerry Rice is still alive, but that's the first. Barry Sanders? I don't know if he's still alive. Other football players who have retired, and then unretired, and then retired again. So, dark yet again. I didn't party. But anyway, fill in the sports. There's a real risk, and we saw it earlier this year at the All-Stars Cup. The players, just because you put 2 players who were really good 5 years ago together does not mean you'll get good games today. But these 2 clearly very close still to being near the top. Which is, seems like quite a distance. But the Queens will retreat. This time, it's charge lots. And this time, you really need roaches. The charge lots jammed into a corner. The spine crawler, the backbone of the defense. But the Queens will be cut down. The surface area is good. And this is much... Oh, a stasis in the midst! And it is pretty good. It actually kind of chokes off some of the charge lots. An awkward angle, to say the least. There's a Templar Archives behind, so Neeb completely shifting it. And I gotta say, that stasis probably hurting more than helping. And Scarlett, another downside of the charge lots, they can't shade away. There's no retreat. They charge into glorious battle. And that's it. And now, it's gonna be a German taxi to the other side. The Queen Drop. Named after Lambo, the German Zerg, who first popularized all-inning ever since they nerfed the Queen off of creep. Partially because of Scarlett. Kept doing Queen Walk builds. So now you can no longer transfuse off of creep with Queens. You need your toes on the creep in order to make it work. And now, hey, would you scooch over? No, there's no, we're all the same size. I need personal space. Yeah, you know that. Sorry. Queen drops on the way, but the Void Ray is an existential threat. Charges up the Void Ray. Neeb very much understands it only does bonus damage to armored when charged. But here comes the Queen Drop. The Void Ray will spot it. And the Overlords, of course, can drop creep as well. There is no blink behind this, which could be the difference. Scarlett with 153 to 123 supply. But a lot of that is in Ravagers and Zerglings. But this time, the Queens are with the fight. And those are counted in the army supply, somewhat misleadingly sometimes. The Cyber Core is depowered, which is mostly irrelevant. Is there a Warp Prism? No. The Void Ray, under attack. Machine guns out. The Corrosive Biles with some intense overkill on that pylon. If Neeb takes out the Queens, then the Oracle could continue to do damage, but there's still a couple in the fray. The last one is taken down, and that means the Oracle can rejoin. The Zerglings in the natural, 17 probe kills. Zerglings in the main, Scarlett! Oh no! It's a disaster! Neeb, his economy gutted by the Zergling drops. Another thing that Scarlett got nerfed. That one we can credit Scarlett directly. When Scarlett... Now we're looking down our rose-colored glasses at our historical tomes here. But when Scarlett defeated SOS in the Olympic Championships, becoming StarCraft 2's only Olympic champion, I'm going to say 2019? I don't think that's right. But soon... So before that, Zergling drops... Get off my creep! Zergling drops required an evolution chamber. Now they require a lair. Because Scarlett was using and abusing them to such an extent that the Protoss got very upset. Which, you know, we can't have that. So they now require a lair. Thus, requiring the German taxi with Overlord speed. And, well, even though it required a lair and had all that going on, Scarlett still finds critical damage, and Neeb is only now recovering. Blink is only halfway done, +2 attack. That is way too many Ravagers and Lings. Scarlett may be assuming Blink is done, but if she knew there wasn't, I feel like you can just go. Though, there's no obligation to do so, is another fair point. As Neeb is on 3 base with a very mediocre army composition. Just gateway units. Their whole thing is warping in, not being good. It's the ability to warp them in wherever, as opposed to the quality of the composition. And that's why Scarlett, well, Neeb demonstrating here over the beautiful ponds of rainfall. But there's a Templar Archives. No storm, as Neeb is very light on the gas. Has not built a probe in quite a while. Got back up to 60. Just enough to get the most income you could hope for at this stage. But not enough to really support much more than that. Just mass. This is 99 to 108 army supply. +2 is finishing. Blink is done. This is best case scenario. Neeb. Oh no! There was nothing in the wall! He never rebuilt it! And the Zerglings get in. But at the same time, the force fields holding the line will be knocked down. Baneling speed is done. And could easily hit those charge lots who will charge directly into it. It's always a really weird situation when Banelings and charge lots interact. But the Ravagers, the Corrosive Bows knocking down the force field. The charge lots are gone. The rest were warped in at home. 15 probes dead. More charge lots out of the warp prism. Corrosive Bow will force the Blink Stalkers even further back. The army thinning out on both sides. And oh no! The warp prism is taken down. 19 probes dead. Neeb still has 41, surprisingly. The main base is being gutted. And 2 Gs will be the result. Scarlett, the counterattack doing critical damage, and Neeb mixing it up, going for the charge lots into the ground-based Protoss, and just gets overrun. Still creating a lot of opportunities, but it wasn't enough. Game number 4. In the bottom left, the best player by far in the history of the United States of America. The Protoss in the red, we have Neeb. On match point, 1 game from victory. Canadian Zerg. The best from Canada. And possibly North America. Honestly, the argument, I feel, despite my slight bias, I do feel like Scarlett has a better argument. Scarlett never had the same peak as Neeb. There was a year where Neeb was very arguably, but definitely the best player outside of Korea. I don't think there's ever been a year where Scarlett can claim that. But Scarlett has been so good for so long. Like, Scarlett has been playing professionally at the top level since like 2011 or 12. And really been successful since at least Heart of the Swarm. Whereas Neeb, from 2016, technically played from 2016 to like 2022. Best years, well, at the top level as Protoss. But his best years being 2017 and 18. So, Neeb with the higher peaks and the fancier medals and trophies potentially, besides Scarlett's Olympic one. But Scarlett with a much more consistent career. And a longer one, obviously. Continuing to this day. Again, making it a little confusing, but I'm not going to complain at all. The fact that I want to stress the fact that Neeb is going toe-to-toe here is actually a bit surprising. I know Scarlett has maybe not been practicing as hard because she's busy balancing zero space, which means playing at the top level, of course, as well. But these have been some very Scarlett games as well. I do love how the personality of the players really comes through. North America is all about personality. That's what we do well. Especially the American players here. Because if you can't play, you cast. If you can't cast, you make Jimmy, edit that out. Neeb, chrono boosting his first adept. Again, with the kind of half wall, which I usually would hate. But Neeb clearly has a plan for it until he gets punched in the face with some Zerglings, but the adept, this is, she's gone for it every time. Ah, and this time Neeb is ready. It is a wall with a shield pattern. How sick is that? But does the, oh no, not like this. The adept pops out. The pylon will not die in time. That was close. Like, I think 2 or 3 more seconds, and Scarlett could have gotten the pylon, which would be devastating, as you do not want to construct additional pylons nearly that early. Zerglings will hunt the adept. The overlord will look on bloodthirstily. You can tell. I mean, look at it. Double adept shading out. And a void ray again. Neeb has his preferred opener. So now we're back to that question. Do you fall back to that original build? Or do you try to mix it up again?
It's about
The void ray and then the oracle create like infinite ambiguity. Where you can deny the first overlord, and then between the oracle and the adepts, it's almost impossible to see what the follow-up is unless they make a huge mistake. The adepts shading back. The nexus is on the way. 4.5 minutes in. Overlord burnt out by the void ray. Twilight Council is on the way. But again, the Twilight Council can lead in pretty much every single direction. As it could be Charge, it could be Glaives, it could be Blink, it could be Templar Archives for Archon drop, it could be a DT Rush, also potentially for Archon drop. 3 more gates are on the way, which means we're leaning towards the Glaives, I think. A very similar timing to the first couple games. And it worked. I think it worked both games. It was just Scarlett was able to overwhelm in game 1. I don't think it was an issue with the build. It was just Neeb not quite able to keep up with Scarlett as the game went on. So it is 4 gate Glaives once again. The Oracle trying to sneak in and knocked out of the sky. Oof. An inauspicious start. That is actually really bad. That is very not good. I said eloquently with great words. The Oracle is kind of desperately needed, both for scouting and for a threat to keep the queens in a certain location. The threat of potentially killing drones, the threat of putting down a stasis. Now that there's no Oracle at all, or at least, oh, no. Neeb in position to potentially block. That is so many adepts. There are 16 adepts and 17 Zerglings. The numbers don't lie, and they potentially spell disaster for Scarlett. Losing the Oracle was bad, but losing the game is arguably worse. There are roaches on the way, but they're not out yet. A temporary evil wall is coming together. The adepts actually going to complete the shade, which I think was worth it. The Zerglings will get the surround. The adepts not using another shade yet, surprisingly. Another few adepts trying to work their way in, but Scarlett opens it up to let the roaches out and then closes it again with the evolution chamber. Might be able to just break through. But Scarlett actually shuts the door in the face of the adepts, and the roaches will keep them out for longer. The shade towards the third. Should see the cancel momentarily. Got it. Okay, there we are. Just using that temporary wall, much like the Protoss themselves. Behind it, again, Neeb mixing it up. Going to be immortal +1 in charge loss. A changeling at the front was denied entry. The Americans weird about that nowadays, but hey, it should be pretty obvious as Neeb has not made any zealots that this is a changeling. Unfortunately, it'd be cool if changelings actually took on like the first tier 1 unit or whatever they saw. But no, it's always a changeling, it's always a zealot or a marine or a zergling. Hey guys, we're gonna throw some shade. Well, the changeling may actually die of old age, which is somewhat rare in this sort of scenario, but Neeb clearly looking the other way. Oh no, the Spire will be scouted. There are already 10... I completely forgot about the Spire. Neeb did not forget about the opportunity. But the mutas are already in production. Gonna lock out some roaches. There is... The anti-air is 2 sentries and a void ray. That is not enough. That is not even the same zip code. Same postal code is enough. Now, the drone is called back in. Out of retirement, just like Neeb to close the door yet again. And Neeb is going to hit the 4th base. Try to keep Scarlett busy for long enough to put together a response to the mutas. But if it costs him everything on the ground, is it worth it? The mutas will take down the adepts. The charge lots slice through the roaches. But this game's starting to look more one-sided than a Mobius strip right now. Neeb, if you can get enough phoenixes to box out the mutas, that's good. But the problem is, there's nothing to stop the roaches. There's still 19 roaches. The mutas will keep everything busy, and then the roaches and lings can just overrun the ground. And that's the problem with having so limited anti-air to follow it up. That's what Scarlett was thinking on Rorschach, where she went for the Spire follow-up, that if you just shut down the early adept pressure or the early gateway pressure, and they don't just go mass Phoenix, for example, then they're so far behind. The Protoss is struggling so hard. And right, what? The scouting immortal! Oh no! It will live. How fortuitous. How gracious of Scarlett. But the roaches and mutas, there are too many of them. We cannot get out. They are coming. The Phoenix is knocked down. The numbers are not there for Neeb. He has no tech. He has no upgrades. He has no hope. The probes are being slaughtered. The roaches are just working their way through. The Robo is dead. And Neeb, I don't know what his plans are. If he plans on playing anymore on the new patch. Maybe participating in some tournaments. But Scarlett with a decisive 3-1 victory. Neeb putting up a strong fight, but I feel like he deviated from the path. The build that he clearly had worked out. And he may have had enough time to put together one build, but the rest seemed slapped together a little bit too slow. And Scarlett overruns him. Bringing us to our anti-spoiler game. Scarlett versus Kelazur here on Lockdown. Kelazur, 1 Rax expand. Scarlett, hatchery first. The new Zerg versus Terran, where Terran, with a change to the ghosts, to make them both stronger and weaker in the late game, if we get there. The Queen, rebelling against the hatchery. Of course, the Zerg, with their faster larva production and their cheaper carapace upgrades. Though, that's been pulled back a bit since we last saw this, but Kelazur has always loved to take us to McDonald's, okay? Definitely a different, much like Neeb, a different flavor of Terran. Now, I'm not saying that's the focus here, but historically, he has preferred mech to bio on a very regular basis and made it work for him, including against Scarlett, almost as often. So, the 2 Reaper start has become a lot more common. Just buying a little bit of extra time and then going for Reaper Hellion behind the Queen. Chicanerous and deplorable. Stop talking to the Reaper. I'm talking at them. It's different. Whatever you say. Exactly. Feel like you're being condescending. I'm not being condescending. You know that means talking down to people. Susan! Sorry. I am blacked out for... Starport on the way. Hellions to follow up the Reapers, but 3 hatches. Notably, no third command center for Kelishore. Instead, opting for potentially Hellion drop. Oh, Hellbat push. I take it back. I push it forward. I'm not sure which one, but it's going to be an armory as the first upgrade building. So that definitely trends in a certain direction. Notably, he's only mining with a 3 total in gas in the main. So not focusing on getting too much tech up too early, but instead maximizing those minerals after getting the starport and the armory. A couple marines and incrementing some more out. Might actually bring them across with the push. And of course Hellions are fast enough that dropping them doesn't seem very necessary. Behind it, a Liberator. Scarlett. A Roach Warren is on the way, but it's a long way from completing. So any defense will have to be with Queens and Lings only. An Overlord caught out. Scarlett has a couple more on the way, so it shouldn't be a hard supply block here. The Hellbats transform. And now burninating their way onto the creep. Gonna go straight down the center. He knows there's a third base, but that's not necessarily relevant. The medevac, the Queens, spreading out. Getting cauterized so far. Down goes one. Not targeting the medevac because there's so much damage coming out. But through the fire and the flames, the Queen struggling to carry on. Another Queen. They're starting to panic. The Inferno immolates another Queen. There are 10 roaches on the way. Saliger's trying to buy time, but it will cost 4 Queens so far, and the Hellbats are still marching across. The Liberator back at home. He's spotted the Zerglings coming across, and another Queen is incinerated. And eventually, the Hellbat should be cleaned up. You'll expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. Okay, that was like 7, but still. The Liberator holding the high ground. Scarlett taking a surprising amount of damage. Is that every Queen? Every single Queen dead. Which is not great when it comes to the early game. Or at all. So... Now, Kelishore can't follow this up really with anything. Liberators are going to be more dangerous when there's literally no Queens and Spore Crawlers have to jankily move their way around. He's looking the other way. The Spore are going to get some hits off, but he is able to pull back in time. 3 Queens producing. Scarlett building 9 more drones. Just finished up. Still ahead by a lot. The Hellbats dealing with the Zergling counterattack, but the Roaches are a bit more to deal with. Lair is done, but there is no Roach speed. Meanwhile, the Hellions just running by. The drones fighting. The door's wide open. Will be shut by the time Scarlett, unfortunately, did the due diligence of an A move. And that means there was enough time to shut the door and buy some time here. But it's bashed down by the Roaches. Doesn't choose to continue forward. There's a Banshee on the way and 2 more factories. One of the Liberators, clearly a select army, comes back home, as do the Hellbats, and a very sporting rally point there. Very technically, Liberators have an anti-air weapon, though. Usually it's an embarrassment as opposed to something very helpful. Scarlett with road speed on the way. 60 to 51 workers. 3rd command center going to be floating over, but the Banshee. A counter to the Ravagers that are now gracing the field. Ravager just taken out. Liberator 2 shots it, but well, there's no way to go home. Without roach speed, the Roaches and Ravagers are dead to the Banshee anyway. So gonna try to get some more damage done, but between the Hellbats, the SCVs actually offering themselves up. 6 SCVs dead. There's nothing on the other side. A Liberator coming back home. Kelishore, maybe not the due diligence we're looking for. Dropping Hellbats out. Scarlett scurries by. And the Roaches will get a few more kills. And the Banshee, wake up! Finally, We'll clean this up. What drones? Now this is a true North American server match. Technically called the Americas server. So we're including Brazil with Kelliger here as well. Anyone who plays on the server knows North America includes Australia. It includes Taiwan. It includes Brazil. And of course, everywhere from Canada to Argentina. But those are the servers you actually play on. You can have anywhere from 10 to like 270 ping if you play on NA. And that's Singapore. Who could forget? The Changeling spotted and taken out because obviously there are no Marines on the map. Just like last game with Neeb and seeing the Changeling Zealots. There are no Marines, so the Changelings are very obvious. Scarlett has 92 drones. How does that happen? She's got 7 mutas on the way. 92 drones. I bet she would be building more. I think she got supply blocked around 136. More drones! You don't need more drones! This is some real Dronely fans content, but... No, 8 more drones! Stop! It's time to stop! 100 drones. Can I get the triple digits? Maybe quadruple digits in the likes count, but 98! 99 drones! Well, that's certainly a strong economy. And Scarlett is mining off 5 bases, so she can actually mine somewhat efficiently with it, which is wild. Now building some basic defense. So, what? Everybody just... Hello? Okay. The mutas fly by, the Liberator. Not like the Liberator wanted to fight them, but... These are Magfield Accelerator upgraded Cyclones. Double damage lock-on. For 50% more, sorry. Meanwhile, the Ravagers, Roaches, and Langs on the 3rd. But the Hell Clones are a lot to contend with. Meanwhile, the Liberator just gonna siege up the 3rd base. Chasing things down. Incinerating a lot of the Zerglings. Just spontaneously combusting, it feels like. The Spore Crawlers. But takes out the Queen and runs right by another Spore. Maneuvering past. Scarlett, don't you dare. Oh my god, she did it again. Like, I lost drones? 10 more! 10 more drones! Another round! Hit me again! No, you've had too much! That's too many drones! 10 more! I don't... You're cut off! 100 drones. On the dot. Because she built 3 hatcheries at a time. Which means Kelliger, well, has 85 SCVs and is building more, which is arguably too many for Mech Terran. There's 2 Infestors on the way. The mutas lose track of time for just a moment. And that means the Hell Clones will cut them off. Great positioning on the Hellions there. The Widow Mines get some shots off. Just the perimeter defense. Baneling speed, I think, only started research once the Banelings were morphed. A classic. We're not going to call it a mistake. We'll just call it delayed benefit. Corrosive Bows rain down. 99 drones for Scarlett. 88 SCVs for Kelliger. Scarlett's still with the income lead, but Mules do... Well, that's still a lot of workers for both sides. Incredibly high economy. The Fungal catches some. Gets more a little bit deeper. The Banelings are not a great counter to Cyclones, but you stack them up enough. Much better than Zerglings against this composition is really more the thought process. But if the Fungals run out, then the Fungals have to come down. You know, that's right. Well, not her, but... Okay, shut up, Brent. I don't... Spire. The mutas still have survived throughout this, though they haven't really thrived. Finding a few SCV kills. Gotta show Replacium now. A second Spire on the way. +2 mech weapons is done. No armor upgrades for Kelliger. Usually you prefer the armor upgrades for mech, or the Hell Clone composition, because most of the Hellion damage is based on... Most of the Hellion and Cyclone damage is based on upgrades and spells, technically, with the lock-on. But Scarlett comes swinging in, rolling by, and bashing through. One command center dead before it can lift off or complete. Another one watching as everything underneath explodes. 13 more workers dead, but Killers will replace him immediately. Incredibly high economy game. Greater Spire on the way. A few Corruptors. Broodlords? Greater Spire on the way. Four Corruptors on the way. What? Contaminate on the armory and 2 mutas. Oh, not really? This isn't possible. Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But it's burning. Right-clicked on the armory. If it denies +3 attack, Kelliger needs to repair that. Well, it might finish before it burns. I'm not sure what the timing is. But there's no reason to be looking at it, though. Past this point. Okay, repairs it with 1 SCV. Just 1. Got the no big contract. Huge fungal. The Hellions. Zoning out the Banelings. Banelings are not light units, but they don't have much HP. So the Hellions don't get bonus damage, but they just burn through everything in Scarlet. Clearly looking the other way. The Zerglings try to overrun the planetary, and it will die by that much. Adrenal glands on +2 lanes. Just enough to break through the planetary fortress, but the Hell Clones get a great trade on the other side. Kelazor with 21k to 14k resources lost. The efficiency, pretty impressive considering just Hell Clones, but now losing a lot more in the corner, as both sides will be taking terrible, terrible damage. The pendulum continues to swing. Kelazor has been more cost-effective, but Scarlet has been on 90 to 100+ drones. And hasn't really lost a base since the original incursion of Hellbats. And she didn't lose a hatchery then, just so much economy and a bunch of queens. The Hell Clones to the north. 4 Broodlords on the way. +3 attack. Just now getting +1 Carapace. That's how little Scarlet values the Carapace on the ground against this composition. Either units get the damage done or they're dead anyways. So +1 Carapace just started. +3 melee and +3 ranged attack are now completed. 4 Broodlords? Okay. I mean, yeah. So, if the army isn't beneath them, locks on, no scan to follow it up. The siege tanks are a liability against these broods. Which is kind of the idea, I think, with 4 Broodlords. A tiny commitment, but forces a potentially titanic one out of Kelazor, who's hurting for money now. The Broodlords take out a siege tank, force the rest to unsiege. Another command center, more SCVs, and Kelazor is falling apart. Scarlet, the Broodlords, the surprisingly large and remarkably slow camel that broke, or the camel that broke the camel's back. Sure, that's the one. That's the one we're going with. Is that why they call it the camelback? The water bottle? Wait a second. That's irrelevant to what's going on right now. The Broodlords will be taken out. Oh, because of the water goes in the humps of the camel. That's why it's called that. It has nothing to do with the stupid analogy. Jimmy, edit that out. I feel something. My humps. Are something that we will not discuss here, but we need to discuss 200 supply versus 130. You see, it's North American casting, it's North American gameplay, it's a full NA game, and Scarlet loses more and more, but she can replace them with even more than that. Kelazor driven back to 3.5 bases. The queens are marching forth. Brenda will have her revenge! Or die trying. The creep. You give it enough time, and Scarlet will put a timer on your game. The creep spread right outside the front doorstep. And another wave of banelings. A single Thor, a few siege tanks. And Scarlett would have to lose this entire army, rebuild it, lose it again. And then, maybe, that's enough to drag Kellisher back into this game. The infestors, trying to use missile turrets. There's only 2 orbital commands. Is there neural parasite? Yeah, siege tanks are pretty good. The scan grabs the Thor. And while the infestors are taken out, the planetary will be taken down. The damage is too damn high. Back to mutas. Oh, she's gonna have 3-3. How many mutas? How do you not have larva? Well, when you throw away 400 zerglings. I thought Zerg got more larva. Okay, so the first 3 larvae on each hatch build less than 10% quicker, which is kind of a big deal in the first 4 to 6 minutes. It is not nearly as big a deal when you have 10 hatcheries and queens are spewing out all their energy into queuing up injects. Calm down. Oh, it'll eventually be relevant. So you can queue up injects, but they do not stack, contrary to the queen's belief. So, mutas. That is a GG of mutas, by the way. As 10 mutas? Okay. 15, maybe. That is 20, 30 mutalisks on top of the cyclones. They will kite back. Not far enough. They're running out of Earth to meet the end of. And Scarlett, well played. Kellisher taps out. And Scarlett, in such incredible Zerg fashion, will overrun yet another one of our legendary players. And I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. I hope I made your day at least a little bit better. I hope you had the little bit of shock, if you've been around for long enough, through all the fire and fury of StarCraft 2 over the last 16 years, to be both excited and confused when you saw Neeb's name. But Scarlett's still showing that she's one of the strongest players in the world. I was really impressed, honestly, with Neeb. He could have just showed up and got his paycheck. But instead, he kept Scarlett in check for at least a little bit of a while. Not long enough. No, I certainly enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Got the means of motivation. Be awesome to check out Patreon, YouTube membership, but your liking and subscribing is still free. At least for now. So thank you for watching. Thank you to our mule tier patrons, Big Jiggy, Devin Door, Kate, Crazy Mouse, Mario Suit, and our top tier members. And, well, make sure to check out this video. Jimmy picked it out just for you. Otherwise, good luck, have fun. Hope to see you next time. Thank you for watching. Stay chill.